So the 60 versus 100 concept is an interesting one. Basically, the idea is that anyone who follows you will do 60% of your good habits and 100% of your bad habits. So let's look into this one. The first thing you really need to understand is that human beings are creatures of boundary. Think about it like this. If they never pursued you for speeding fines, if you could just rack up as many speeding fines as you liked, would you ever really stop speeding? If they never checked to see if you paid your taxes, if taxes was an honesty policy, would anybody ever really pay their taxes? Probably not. So we as human beings, in all facets of our existence, we need boundaries in order to perform at our best. Now, as a leader, you really need to understand that people are looking to your example. So the concept of the 60 versus 100 is really important to get your head around, because they will do 60% of your good habits and 100% of your bad habits. A lot of the times you'll hear people saying, you need to lead from the front, or you need to be a good example. But that's kind of rhetoric. It's not something that you listen to and actually understand the consequences. I don't know about you guys, but for me, if I don't know the consequences of something, I'm probably going to do it. I'm one of those ask for forgiveness rather than permission kind of people. And so really understanding what it actually looks like when you set the right example versus when you don't is something that's going to give you the leverage to know what to do and what not to do when you're around new team members. So let's look at the 60%. Now, 60% of your good habits is what your team members will normally emulate. The reason for that is they use you as the benchmark. You're there to create the belief of what's possible. Now, if you're not in that sort of player coach role, where you're maybe, let's say you're running a team and you're not out on field with people, or you're not, you're more of a coach than an actual captain on the field, then they're going to compare themselves to your top performers and generally do 60 to 70% of that. So understanding that for performance, if someone does 5 sales a day, a new rep will do 3 sales a day once they're up to speed. Or if somebody closes, 15 deals in a month, that a new rep will normally do closer to 10. So they set that belief as, okay, I should be able to hit that, and I'll try and come as close as I can. And that's why that 60% is relevant. Now, the inverse is an interesting one. When you think about why do they copy 100% of your bad habits as opposed to only 60% of your good, it's because, like I said, humans are creatures of boundary. Our brain is designed to conserve as much energy as it can. It likes to do as little as possible. Why do you think we like shortcuts and hacks and cheat codes and all of that kind of stuff? Is because your brain wants to use as little energy as it can, because it's still operating on the idea that food is scarce and it may not be able to get that energy. So really understanding the moment somebody gets permission to do something easier or lazier, they will almost always do that thing. So like I said, people will do 60% of your good habits and 100% of your bad habits. Let's look at some examples. So if you want someone to emulate your results, knowing they're going to do probably 60% of that, then you want to make sure that your 100% is really good. What kind of things would that include? Well, obviously results if you're in a results-based role, but what about the input variables? What about the level of education you commit to? Your routine in the morning, or how often you're learning, or how often you're talking about learning, who you're networking with. Well, the more you talk about that, the more your reps are going to do 60% of what you do. What about something like professionalism? Well, if you're there early, they're probably going to be a little bit early. Or if you're dressed well, they'll probably dress pretty well. What about work ethic? If they can see clearly that you're setting the example with how hard someone should be working, they will normally work 60 to 70% as hard as that, especially if it's something measurable, which if you're working in business or sales, should be everything you do. So those are some examples of good things. But what about bad? Well, the first and most obvious one is underperformance. One of the most devastating things a team can have is an underperforming leader. Now, before you try and fix the result, you've got to remember you fix the things that fix the result. So that might be your skills, that might be your work ethic, that might be your attitude, but they will take your lead when it comes to underperformance. If you're making the results look hard, they're going to buy into the fact that it's difficult. Another example of a bad habit is your partying lifestyle. If you're somebody who gets, on a big night every weekend or 2 nights a week, or even, God forbid, midweek, people will notice that and they'll follow your lead on that. They'll know, okay, we don't have to take things so seriously. Laziness. People, if they see you slacking off, if you're playing around on your phone when you're meant to be working, if you're moving slowly through your call list or through your, not walking between doors quickly enough or not stopping a lot of customers, whatever you might be doing, if they see that you're lazy, it gives them permission to be lazy as well. Compliance. It's a big one. If there are rules that your team or your company needs followed in order to prevent problems, even if it's somewhat low risk, if they see you skipping compliance needs, like customer quality or qualification, or the way that you work your systems, the way that you actually go through the list to make sure people aren't double called or whatever it might be, or not reinforcing the systems in general. Those are all things that people will start doing. And that one's especially pernicious because you generally as a leader know where the line is. You know when to do it and when not to do it. Whereas if they try and say the same thing that you say, whether that's cheeky or putting through someone that you probably shouldn't or whatever it might be, they are not going to know when not to do that. And eventually it's going to cause a lot of problems in your team. The last thing, and arguably the most important thing that you need to get your head around in terms of 60 versus 100 is a bad attitude. If you as a leader don't show enthusiasm or promise or belief or hope, if you're a negative person and you say negative things and you talk about things that you can't control and you make excuses, you're going to have reps or team members who also emulate that behavior. And that one in particular can ruin somebody's career, because if they don't get those positive thinking habits early on into what they're doing, it can devastate their potential and really cause a lot of problems. So really get your head around the idea of 60 versus 100. And while you're out there, even today, make sure that you're setting the right example for what you want people to do, and more importantly, not letting anybody see you do the things that you don't want them doing. Best of luck.